Hello you guys, it's Karen and I wanted to do another law of attraction video, and I was thinking about this all last night as I was going to sleep, and I hope that I can get it across the way I was thinking about it in my head, because it made perfect sense. But whether it makes perfect sense today or not, I don't know. But I want to tell you how to get a car parking space using the law of attraction. So let me tell you quickly the background to this. Basically, I have always been really anxious whenever it comes to driving and parking. Driving in somewhere new makes me anxious, even when I've got my GPS on. But parking, especially if somebody's watching me, or if there's a queue of traffic waiting for you to reverse into a space or whatever, makes me super anxious. And if I'm going somewhere for an appointment at a certain time, I'm always anxious as to whether or not I'm going to get a parking spot, because even, for example, when I go to the GP, the car park is always full. But thankfully, I've got this one place at the GP's where I know I can park. It's up on the curb, so it's not something I should do, but it's somewhere that nobody ever thinks to park. It's not on the bit where, wheelchairs and buggies would need to get over. It's not in anybody's way. It still leaves enough of the path for people to get past. It still leaves enough of the road that people are not going to, I've got a spot, so I'm not so bad. But I used to always be really anxious, because I'd be like, well, what time do I leave? Because I could have to park streets away and walk to it. And I'm the same with a lot of things like that. There's a hospital that I have to go to, a local hospital, and they literally only have about 10 spaces. And it's like, what's going to happen if I can't get a space? Where am I going to park? So I decided probably about a year ago to use the law of attraction for a parking space. And I thought, I don't know how it could possibly work, because I believe in the power of the mind, but how can the law of attraction, how can you get a parking space from the power of your mind? But I thought, well, let me give it a go. So I would, on the way to wherever I was going, or am going, because I do this now, I say, there will be a parking space for me. There's nothing to worry about. I wonder where the parking space will be. And I sort of do it in terms of, it's interesting to see where my parking space will be. It's almost like I feel like the law of attraction has reserved me a space, and there is a reserved space, so I don't need to worry about it. And so I don't know whether it was the first time I did it, but one of the first times I did it was in the hospital that I mentioned, the local hospital. I had an appointment, and you don't want to be there I don't want to be there half an hour early. I mean, I'm normally turn up to places 10, 15 minutes early, but you don't want to be there an hour early just so that you can circle and wait for somebody to leave who could be in the hospital for hours. So I got there probably 20 minutes early and I just didn't want to be anxious. I was anxious enough about the reason for going there, and I was like, you know what? The law of attraction has reserved me a space. It's all going to be fine. And I drove in and drove round, and there was no spaces. And so I was like, right, okay, it's okay. Don't panic. There is a space for you. Just drive round again. So I drove round again, and as I did, I saw somebody reversing out of a space, but I also saw that somebody came in front of me into the car park, and they were clearly going to get that space. And at that point, I was kind of like, oh, I don't know why I thought this would work. She's going to get that space. What am I going to do? But as I was sitting there waiting for person to reverse out and then the person in front of me to reverse in, literally 2 cars behind that, which was right easy for me to get into and nobody could possibly take the space, somebody pulled out and there was a space for me. So of course I wasn't like, oh my goodness, that was magic, the law of attraction caused that. I just thought, let me try this every time I go for a car parking space and see what happens. And honestly, it has never failed me. And like I said, I've been doing it for about a year now, and I do it a lot there's a shopping centre local to me that is always chock-a-block, and everybody tries to get a space on the floor where you go straight into the shopping mall as opposed to having to walk up and down the stairs. I particularly do, because I'm not patient enough to get the lift, well, there isn't a lift anyway from the middle floor, I don't think. Anyway, I'm not patient enough, and I normally then try and do the stairs, and that hurts my knees and yada yada. And I've tried it a lot of times in there, and I did it yesterday, and it's actually evolved a little bit, because what happens is I drive in and you can kind of go around the main part of the car park, but then there's another bit that if you go left and up this one bit, it's mostly disabled on one side, but then the other side is not disabled, and it's sort of out towards the water. And as you come up the slope, it looks like there are no spaces. You'd always look and go, no, it's full, but it's behind another lot of cars. And so one time I was thinking to myself, oh, there's no spaces. I'm going to have to park either on one of the middle floors and use the steps, or I'm going to have to go really high up, which I kind of don't like. That makes me anxious. And I thought, no, although you don't think you can see any spaces, maybe that's where my reserved spot is. And so I drove around the back, and sure enough, there was a space. And so yesterday when I went there, it wasn't a big deal actually, because I was thinking if I go there and there's no spaces, I'll not go and do my shopping. There was a few bits I needed to do that weren't essential. But I drove around and I was like, I'm interested to see where the law of attraction has got my space for me. And I drove around a couple of times and I thought, it doesn't look to me as if there's any spaces over there, but let me go and have a look. And there's a queue of traffic and nobody's going around there because they can't see any spaces. And I went round and there was a space. There's just this blind spot that you can't see certain spaces there. And it just made me smile. But what I realised was the law of attraction is working to get me a parking space, but it's working in a completely different way than I ever imagined. I don't know that it's not magic. You could call it vibrations. But what's happening is I've got more patience and I'm getting less stressed about trying to find somewhere to park. And so because you're expecting a car park space, I think you're telling your subconscious, and your subconscious is more open and more alert to people leaving and to spaces where you might not think there's spaces. Because in my panicked mode, I'm just so negative. I used to be like, oh God, I'd drive up and go, there's no spaces. What am I going to do? Where am I going to, oh God, I'm going to have to go. Right, I'll go up to the next floor without really even looking. Whereas what this has done has just, I'm so confident I'm going to get a space that I'm very calm about it. And therefore it's like, oh, well, I don't know where my space is. I better go round again. And then somebody would leave. It's happened to me in another car park in that same shopping centre on the ground floor. If ever I'm going to the ground floor car park, that rarely has spaces, but I've gone in there and, somebody's just left. And don't get me wrong, sometimes I have to go round. I think the most I've ever gone round is 3 times. I don't even remember that, but 2 or 3 times is the maximum I've had to drive round before a space has become available. I've never ever not got a space since doing this. And so I think that the difference is it's just given me patience somehow. I'm not a patient person and I'm a panicky person. So like I said, normally I would drive up, look about and go, well, there's no spaces on this floor, so I'm going to have to go up to the next floor and then I'm going to have to walk. And, being in a positive frame of mind, which is really what the law of attraction is about, is that if you are positive, you attract positivity, you attract positive outcomes. That being in a positive, calmer state of mind has actually allowed me to look places I would normally go, oh, there's going to be nothing there, Mrs. Negative Nancy, or well, there's nothing on this floor, what's the point in going round again? And I found that super interesting. I don't know whether you guys will, maybe this is a really boring thing to talk about, a car parking space, but it's made a real difference for me because I don't now have that same panic when I'm going to an appointment. I just think, the law of attraction will have a space for me somewhere, and I don't worry about it. And I don't get panicked if I don't see a space immediately. And so it's helped me in that way. Like I said, it shows you that it's not magic, but it is about the power of the mind and what it can do and what being positive can do. So I thought I'd share that with you because I know you guys are enjoying the law of attraction, and I thought it was a nice little lesson for me, and maybe it's something you could try and let me know how you get on. You do, a lot of the law of attraction is you have to believe it and you have to feel it. But I didn't at first. I'd be saying, oh, I wonder where my car parking space is, thinking, I don't know how this could even work. I'm not going to have a car parking space. But the more you say it and the more you do it, the more you actually start to believe it. And so I've surprised myself in that, So like I said, give it a try. Let me know how you get on. I hope this was interesting, and I'll speak to you soon.